When it comes to Honda vehicles, I'm not usually very impressed. I mean, sure, they are pretty nice, but often they come with a very premium price tag too. And this car right beside me is no exception. Or is it? This is the 2024 Honda BRV in the top trim VX. Let's see if this car is worth it, especially considering that it is the most expensive car in its class. So last year when the Honda BRV was first unveiled, we took a look at each of the variants and pointed out the differences between them. So if you're interested in seeing that, just click up here. But now that we have the top of the line VX Honda Sensing variant with us, let's show you the exterior. Being the top of the line trim, of course, you get all the bells and whistles. Over at the front, you have a chrome grille, you have LED headlights with LED DRLs, you even get a fog light by the bottom, and of course, you also do get sensors for your Honda Sensing, but we'll get to that later. Now, on the side of the vehicle, this is where the BRV really stands out, because while the rest of its competitors in this class look like boring MPVs, well, except for the Hyundai Stargazer, this one, it's a little bit sportier looking, it's a little bit more rugged looking. So if you look at this from afar and you didn't know that it was an MPV, you'd think that it is a crossover SUV. You have pretty good ground clearance, you have chunky tires, you also get over fenders, and you even get roof rails by the top. And speaking of these tires right here, they are wrapping a set of 17-inch rims, which is standard for the entire BRV lineup except for the base model trim. Now, also being the top of the line VX trim, you also get these chrome door handles over here. And if you look at your wing mirrors, well, not here on the driver's side, but if you go over there at the passenger side, there's even a camera over there. That is your lane watch camera, which shows you your blind spot there by your infotainment screen, perfect for dealing with kamote riders. For the rear of the vehicle too, it looks pretty clean. Now, there's this particular trim piece here that I used to not like, but it's kind of growing on me now. It's this chrome strip that runs between the two tail lamps. This reminds me of the Nissan Terra. Now, your tail lights, those are LEDs. This high mount stoplight or your third brake light, that's also LEDs. You get a reverse camera, you get sensors, you get everything here. Now, let's open up this tailgate. That's something you don't get though, power tailgate, but it is pretty light. And as you can see here, if you do fold up the third row of seats, well, space is pretty limited. After all, this is a very compact MPV, although it is a 7-seater MPV. But once you do fold down both of these seats, and yeah, space is actually pretty good. The only issue I have with it is that it has this ginormous lip. So if you do put larger items in here, just put something over here by the bumper end just so that it doesn't like tip over. But that aside, overall, it's a very practical car. Should you need extra space? Yes, those second row seats can even fold 60-40. Now for the powertrain, you would expect a 1.5-liter engine under the hood because that's exactly what the entire class has. And yes, you're right, it still is a 1.5-liter engine. However, this is the most powerful engine in its class. So what you have here is a 1.5-liter naturally aspirated gasoline engine with VTEC, of course, making 121 horsepower and 145 Newton meters of torque paired to a CVT. But Honda being Honda, not only is it very powerful, but it's also very efficient. What you can get with this engine right here is a 9.5 kilometers per liter inside the city, absolutely excellent, and 22 kilometers per liter on the highway. How's that for efficiency? Entering the BRV VX, now we check the door thud. And it's not great, but at least for a car of its class, this is a little bit on the better end of things. And now in here being the top of line trim, you can expect everything to be here. So you have a leather wrap steering wheel, you have leather seats, you even get some of these leather by the center of your dashboard. You get paddle shifters, you get buttons for advanced driver assistance systems, which by the way, include adaptive cruise control, something you can only get for this exact car in this exact class. Lead car departure notification, you get lane departure warning, and all that. Pretty impressive. Also, you get 6 speakers, 2 of which are tweeters, 6 airbags, so it's about as loaded as it can get. Now, your instrument cluster, it's a very basic instrument cluster, but there is a center screen right there which measures 4.2 inches big. You also have a slightly larger 7-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and you also get a reverse camera. So all in all, pretty impressive stuff. Your climate control, it may be a single zone climate control system, but it still is a climate control system, which is pretty good. Finding your perfect driving position here is also really easy because these seats can go up so high and go down so low. Also, the steering column, although it does not really telescope, it only tilts, for some reason, it just is in the perfect position. So, excellent job, Honda. Practicality-wise, this car is also pretty practical because you get 2 USB-A ports, you get a 12-volt outlet, you get so much cubbies for your drinks, so you get 2 cup holders by the center, you have a cubby on the side, and while you do only get a regular shifter, the trade-off for that is you do get a regular handbrake, which means that if you really want to, given that it's a Honda, even though it's an MPV, you can have a little bit of fun with this car. Oh, also one more cool feature, take a look at the key. There's an extra button right here. This is for your remote engine start, so that is pretty cool. Entering the Honda BRV is also pretty easy because you don't really have to climb into it nor kind of squat in to get in. So your elderly relatives, they will find this pretty good. Now for the door thud, that sounds just about okay. Now, space back here is generally pretty good if you're a little bit on the lower end of the height spectrum. I'm only 5'6" tall, seated behind my own driving position, and I have around 6 or 7 inches of legroom or so. But if you're probably 6 feet tall and you're seated behind yourself, not the most optimal. And do take note that these seats right here, they do slide forward and backwards, and this is already set to the maximum rearwards position. Now, these seats can also recline, and once you do recline them, oh yeah, you can get pretty comfortable back here. Now, for your other toys over here, you get your own blower. It's not an AC system, just a blower, which is pretty standard for its class. You do have this center armrest too, and you get 2 of these map pockets. Plus, you even have this like tiny pocket just for your phone or your wallet. That's a pretty good touch from Honda. Other cubby spaces on the side, they're pretty big. Place to put your phone, a big jug holder by the bottom, and here by the center, you even have a 12-volt outlet. Now, let's try sitting at the 3rd row seat. So let me just return this to the regular position. And as we fold this one down, you'll now see that the 3rd row, well, it's a little bit best reserved for children, right? So it is definitely doable. In fact, if I just kind of recline this a little bit, I think I would prefer this over sitting in the 3rd row of a Toyota Fortuner because, yeah, legroom might be limited, but I still have around an inch or so. And again, this is with the 2nd row seat slid all the way back. Plus, I don't have to like bend and curl my legs too much because the floor is pretty low too. Additionally, headroom is actually pretty decent. Again, as long as you're not super tall, right? So yeah, although best reserved for children, this is definitely doable, provided that the ride is not that long. Now let's drive the Honda BRV VX. And driving this car, being the most powerful car in the class, you know that the engine will never complain. It's not powerful, definitely not, but it still is more than good enough. Now, yes, it's true that I haven't been able to try this car out with all 7 seats occupied. However, I have tried its competitors with way less power, and even those cars don't really complain. So I would safely assume that this one wouldn't either. The max I've tried with this car is about 4 occupants, and with that, it's pretty good. It really pulls pretty okay. What I don't like with it though is the CVT. Yes, it doesn't really groan too much as with other CVTs in the market, but still, it still is a CVT, and if you put a CVT in a car that's going to be pretty heavy because of passengers, that's the one that kind of complains. It kind of just rubber bands a little bit, which at first, when I first tried this out, like last year, I didn't really feel it because we were in a small test course, but now on the road, yes, I can still feel the CVT rubber banding. Next would be just how light this car feels. It may look like a crossover, but don't get me wrong, it still is just an MPV, and MPVs are always tuned to be this like soft and easy to drive light machine, and that is true even for this one. The steering is light, the car doesn't feel too big, yet despite that, you still get a driving position that is surprisingly good. You get to jack up these seats pretty high, which gives you a pretty commanding view of the road in front of you, something that you only usually get with, proper ladder on frame SUVs. Moving on to noise, vibration, and harshness suppression. And when you are going at highway speeds, yes, it can get a little bit loud in here, but in city speeds, surprisingly, it's about as quiet as the Honda Brio and way more quiet than the Honda HR-V as well as the Honda Civic, even in the RS trim. So I don't know what Honda did here, but whatever it is that they did a pretty good job. For vibrations, you don't really feel too much. That gasoline VTEC engine, it's pretty smooth. And for harshness, this is where it gets a little bit weird. You see, for small bumps and potholes, the BRV handles it extremely well. But when it comes to bigger bumps, you would expect these like crossovers to be a lot softer on bigger bumps. But for some reason, once you hit a big bump, it is about as harsh as a large ladder on frame SUV, which really doesn't make sense to me. You really get jolted when you hit a big pothole. For handling too, you'd be very surprised that the Honda BRV handles pretty well. I wouldn't say it handles as well as an HRV, but it's not bad for one of these like MPV, crossover MPVs. In fact, it is probably the best car in its class when it comes to handling. But still, of course, don't expect supercar performance or even Honda City level performance, right? But yeah, for an MPV, this is about as good as it gets. Finally, let's talk about its advanced driver assistance systems. And yes, this gets adaptive cruise control, gets lane departure warning, lane keeping assist, and all of that. And this is the only car in the class with adaptive cruise control. But is it excellent? No, I wouldn't really say so. It is definitely good for the class, given that the rest don't have it. However, this is not like more expensive cars out there. This cannot do city speed adaptive cruise control. It doesn't have stop and go. It deactivates below 30 kilometers per hour. And I believe even like the lane keeping assist and the lane departure warning, it turns off below like 70 kilometers or so. So it really is just a highway instrument. So is the Honda BRV in this top spec VX trim worth it? Or is it just like its other Honda siblings, a little bit hard to justify for its price? Well, for that, we do have to talk about its pricing. This car right here costs 1,390,000 pesos. And if you want it in this particular color, premium opal white silver, it's gonna cost you even more at 1,410,000 pesos. So here's the verdict. If you really need a car in this exact class that can give you the best driving experience, the best power, the best handling, as well as advanced driver assistance systems, then yes, it is totally worth it and it definitely stands out. However, if you're just looking for a car in this class in general, that's a little bit hard to justify, just like a lot of its other Honda siblings.